Have you ever watched someone walk into a room and immediately command respect? Not because they were the loudest or flashiest, but because they had this quiet confidence, this sense that they knew exactly what they were doing and where they were going. Meanwhile, you're standing there feeling like life is happening to you instead of through you. Like no matter how hard you work, how many hours you put in, someone else always seems to get ahead. They make the right moves at the right time, while you're constantly putting out fires and wondering what you did wrong. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Most people spend their entire lives reacting to whatever comes their way. They wake up, check their phone, respond to whatever seems urgent, and repeat. Day after day, year after year, wondering why they feel so powerless, so overlooked, so out of control. But here's what I've discovered. The people who seem to have it all figured out aren't necessarily smarter, more talented, or luckier than you. They've simply learned to think strategically. Strategic thinking is the superpower that flips the entire game. It's what transforms you from someone who reacts to life into someone who designs it. It's what makes you the person others turn to for guidance, the one who stays calm under pressure, the one who always seems to be 3 steps ahead. And here's the beautiful truth. It's completely learnable. In the next 90 minutes, you're going to learn to think like a master strategist. You'll discover how to anticipate obstacles before they appear, make decisions with clarity and confidence, and design your life with the precision of a chess grandmaster. We'll start by understanding the strategic mindset, how to break free from emotional reactions and start thinking long-term. Then we'll dive into the power of clarity, because you can't hit a target you can't see. We'll explore how to gather the right information without getting stuck in analysis paralysis, and how to see the big picture while others get lost in the details. You'll learn the art of anticipation, how to prepare for multiple futures so nothing can blindside you. We'll master the crucial skill of timing, understanding when to move and when to wait. You'll discover how to leverage your resources for maximum impact, adapt quickly when things change, and influence others with psychological precision. Finally, we'll turn all of this strategy into real-world action and results. By the time we're finished, you won't just understand strategic thinking, you'll live it. You'll move through life with purpose, power, and unshakable confidence. You'll stop getting stuck in the chaos and start creating outcomes that matter to you. The best part? You already have everything you need to master this. You don't need a high IQ, a fancy degree, or years of experience. All you need is the willingness to pause, think clearly, and act with intention. So take a deep breath and get ready, because you're about to discover how to outsmart any challenge, not by chance, but by choice. Chapter 1: The Strategic Mindset. Think before you react. Let me tell you about 2 friends I knew in college, Sarah and Lisa. They were roommates, both studying the same major, both equally intelligent. But their lives took completely different paths, and it all came down to one crucial difference: how they responded to crisis. During their senior year, both received devastating news on the same day. Sarah discovered her longtime boyfriend had been cheating on her. Lisa found out her father had lost his job and could no longer help with her tuition. Sarah immediately called in sick, spent 3 days in bed crying, then impulsively booked a flight across the country to confront her boyfriend. She missed crucial job interviews, her grades plummeted, and she graduated without any real prospects. Lisa, on the other hand, felt the same shock, the same fear. But instead of reacting immediately, she did something different. She took a walk, just 20 minutes to let the initial wave of emotion pass. Then she sat down and asked herself one simple question: what outcome do I want from this situation? Within a week, Lisa had applied for emergency financial aid, picked up a part-time job, and reached out to her network for advice. She graduated with honors and multiple job offers. Same crisis, same emotional impact, completely different results. The difference? Sarah reacted. Lisa responded strategically. This is the foundation of strategic thinking, the ability to pause between stimulus and response, between what happens to you and what you do about it. It's the skill that separates people who feel powerless from people who create their own power. Most of us live in what I call reaction mode. Something happens, someone cuts us off in traffic, our boss criticizes our work, our child throws a tantrum, our partner seems distant, and we immediately respond based on emotion. We get angry, defensive, anxious, or hurt. We say things we don't mean, make decisions we regret, and create problems we didn't intend. But strategic thinkers operate differently. They've trained their minds to create space between what happens and how they respond. In that space lies all their power. Let me share the most important tool you'll ever learn, the pause principle. Before you react to any situation, especially one that triggers strong emotions, give yourself 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds to ask, what outcome do I want here? It sounds almost too simple, but those 3 seconds can transform your relationships, your career, and your entire life. Imagine your teenager comes home an hour past curfew, and your first instinct is to explode with anger. But you pause. What outcome do you want? To punish them? To teach them responsibility? To maintain trust and open communication? That pause helps you respond in a way that actually achieves your goal instead of just venting your frustration. Or picture this. Your colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting. Your immediate impulse might be to call them out publicly, but you pause. What outcome do you want? To humiliate them? To get recognition? To prevent it from happening again? That strategic pause might lead you to have a private conversation that actually solves the problem without damaging relationships. The pause isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about managing them intelligently. Your feelings are valid and important. They're giving you information about what matters to you, but they don't always give you the best strategy for handling the situation. Think of emotions like weather. You can't control when a storm hits, but you can choose how to dress for it, where to take shelter, and how to move through it safely. Strategic thinking means acknowledging the storm of emotion while making decisions based on clarity, not chaos. Now, here's what's crucial to understand. This isn't about becoming cold or calculating. Strategic thinkers aren't emotionless robots. They feel deeply, but they channel those feelings into wise action rather than impulsive reaction. The truth is, developing a strategic mindset requires practice. Your brain has been wired for immediate response since childhood. Every time something happened, you reacted. It's become automatic. But just like any other habit, you can rewire it. Start small. The next time someone says something that annoys you, pause for 3 seconds before responding. When you receive unexpected news, take a breath before deciding what to do. When you're about to make an impulsive purchase, ask yourself what outcome you really want from spending that money. Each time you pause instead of react, you're building your strategic thinking muscle. You're training your mind to be your ally, not your enemy. Here's another powerful shift. Start thinking in terms of outcomes rather than outputs. Most people focus on activities, how busy they are, how hard they're working, how much they're doing. Strategic thinkers focus on results, what they're actually achieving, whether their actions are moving them closer to their goals. Your greatest power isn't speed, it's direction. The world rewards people who know where they're going and why, not people who just move fast without purpose. So starting today, I want you to claim a new identity. You're no longer the person who gets swept away by emotions, who reacts without thinking, who feels powerless when challenges arise. You're becoming someone who pauses, evaluates, and responds with wisdom. Someone who thinks before they act, who chooses their battles, who plays the long game. Because the truth is, your mind is your most powerful weapon. And once you learn to master it, there's no challenge you can't outsmart. Chapter 2. Clarity is power, defining your endgame. I once met a man at a coffee shop who looked absolutely exhausted. He was on his laptop, surrounded by papers, checking his phone constantly. When I asked how his day was going, he said, "I've been incredibly productive. I answered 47 emails, attended 3 meetings, and completed 2 project reports." "That's impressive," I replied. "What are you working toward?" He paused, looking confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what's your goal? What's the outcome you're trying to create with all this activity?" He stared at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "I honestly don't know. I'm just busy." This man represents millions of people. They're working harder than ever, staying busy from morning to night, but they have no clear destination. They're like someone driving at full speed with no idea where they're going. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Without clarity, every distraction looks like an opportunity. Without a clear destination, any road will take you there, which means nowhere meaningful. Clarity is your greatest leverage in life. It's what separates people who feel scattered and overwhelmed from those who move with purpose and power. When you know exactly what you want, every decision becomes easier. You stop saying yes to things that don't matter and start focusing on what does. But here's the problem. Most people have never been taught how to get clear on what they truly want. They know what they don't want. They don't want to be stressed, broke, lonely, or stuck. But knowing what you don't want isn't the same as knowing what you do want. Let me ask you a question that might feel uncomfortable. What do you really want? Not what your parents wanted for you. Not what society says you should want. Not what looks good on social media. What do you actually want for your life? If you struggle to answer that, you're not alone. Most people can't answer with any real precision. They'll give vague responses like, "I want to be happy," or "I want to be successful." But vague goals create vague results. Here's how to get clear. Instead of thinking about what you want to have, think about how you want to feel and who you want to become. Instead of, "I want $1 million, ask yourself, what would having financial freedom allow me to feel and do? Instead of, "I want to find love," explore, what kind of relationship would make me feel valued and fulfilled? Let me share a story about my friend Marcus. For years, he told everyone his goal was to make it big in business. He started company after company, chasing every opportunity that promised quick success. But nothing ever worked out, and he couldn't figure out why. Then one day, I asked him to dig deeper. What does making it big actually mean to you? After some reflection, he realized what he really wanted was the respect of his father, who had always criticized him for not being ambitious enough. Once Marcus understood his true motivation, everything changed. He stopped chasing flashy business ideas and started building something sustainable. He stopped trying to impress others and started creating genuine value. Today, he runs a successful consulting firm, not because he's trying to prove something to his father, but because he's clear on what success actually means to him. This is the power of clarity. It transforms wishful thinking into strategic action. Here's a practical exercise. Write down your goal in one sentence, but make it specific enough that someone else could measure whether you've achieved it. Instead of "get in shape," write "lose 20 pounds and run a 5K in under 30 minutes by December." Instead of "improve my marriage," write "have weekly date nights and learn to argue constructively without raising our voices." Specificity fuels strategy. The clearer you are about your destination, the easier it becomes to map the route. Now comes the game-changing part, reverse engineering. Most people plan forward. They think about what they want, then try to figure out the first step. Strategic thinkers plan backward. They start with the end result and work their way back to the beginning. Let's say your goal is to write a book within the next year. Start by imagining yourself holding that finished book. What had to happen right before that moment? Maybe it was getting the final proofread back from your editor. What had to happen before that? Completing your final draft. Before that, writing the last chapter. Before that, establishing a daily writing routine. Suddenly, your big, overwhelming goal becomes a series of clear, manageable steps. You're not just dreaming anymore, you're strategizing. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to do everything at once. They want to write the book, learn a new language, get in shape, improve their relationships, and advance their career all at the same time. This scattered approach guarantees mediocre results in everything. Strategic thinkers understand the power of priority. They know that saying yes to everything means saying yes to nothing meaningful. So they choose their battles. They pick 1 to 3 major goals and give those goals their full attention. Here's a simple but powerful tool, the priority filter. Before you commit to any new project, opportunity, or obligation, ask yourself, does this directly support one of my top 3 goals? If not, you have 3 options: eliminate it, delegate it, or delay it until after you've achieved your primary objectives. This filter will save you hundreds of hours and prevent you from getting distracted by shiny objects that don't actually matter. Remember, clarity isn't just about knowing what you want. It's about knowing what you're willing to sacrifice to get it. Every yes is a no to something else. Every choice has an opportunity cost. Strategic thinkers understand this trade-off and make it consciously rather than accidentally. When you're truly clear on your endgame, saying no becomes easier because you're not just rejecting an opportunity. You're protecting something more important. Starting today, I challenge you to define what you truly want in one clear, specific sentence. Reverse engineer it into actionable steps. Ruthlessly prioritize what matters most. Because once you're clear on the what and the why, the how becomes much less mysterious. You're not just moving anymore, you're moving with meaning. Chapter 3. Information is ammunition. Learn before you move. Picture 2 generals preparing for battle. The first general charges ahead immediately, relying on courage and determination alone. The second general spends time understanding the terrain, studying the enemy's patterns, and gathering intelligence before making a move. Which one would you bet on? Yet in our daily lives, most of us act like the first general. We make decisions based on limited information, assumptions, and gut feelings. We jump into relationships without really knowing the person. We take jobs without researching the company culture. We make investments without understanding the market. Then we wonder why things don't work out as planned. Here's a truth that might sting. Information isn't just helpful, it's your greatest competitive advantage. In a world where most people operate on guesswork and wishful thinking, the person who actually knows what they're talking about has enormous power. But let me be clear about something. I'm not advocating for endless research that leads to paralysis. There's a crucial difference between strategic information gathering and analysis paralysis. One leads to intelligent action. The other leads to intelligent procrastination. Let me tell you about 2 friends who both wanted to start their own businesses. Jennifer spent 6 months reading every business book, taking every online course, and researching every possible scenario. She had notebooks full of information, but never actually started anything. David spent 2 weeks researching his target market, understanding his competition, and validating his business idea with real customers. Then he launched. He made mistakes along the way, but he adapted quickly because he had built feedback loops into his process. Jennifer had more information, but David had the right information. And more importantly, he acted on it. This is the art of strategic information gathering, learning what you need to know when you need to know it, without getting stuck in the research phase forever. So how do you gather information strategically? Start with these 3 filters. First, the relevance filter. Will this information directly impact my decision or outcome? If you're trying to choose between 2 job offers, researching the history of each company might be relevant. Reading about general industry trends from 5 years ago probably isn't. Second, the timeliness filter. Is this information current and actionable? The business landscape changes rapidly. What worked in 2019 might not work today. Always prioritize recent, relevant data over outdated information. Third, the credibility filter. Is this source trustworthy and experienced? Your friend's opinion about investing might be well-intentioned, but it's not equivalent to advice from a certified financial planner. Consider the source's expertise, track record, and potential biases. Here's a real-life example. Last year, my neighbor Sarah was considering a career change from teaching to real estate. Instead of jumping in blindly or researching for months, she applied these filters strategically. She spent 1 week interviewing 3 successful real estate agents about their daily reality, challenges, and earning potential. She shadowed one agent for a day to see the job firsthand. She researched the local market conditions and licensing requirements. She calculated her financial runway and created a transition plan. Total research time, 2 weeks. Result: she made an informed decision to make the switch and was prepared for the challenges ahead. Today, she's thriving in her new career because she moved fast but not blindly. Compare this to another friend who researched real estate for 8 months by reading online forums and watching YouTube videos. He never actually talked to a real agent or visited any properties. His research was extensive but not strategic. He eventually abandoned the idea because he was paralyzed by information overload. The key is knowing what questions to ask and where to find reliable answers. Don't just collect information, collect insight. When you're gathering information, focus on these critical areas. What are the real challenges, not just the obvious ones? Everyone knows starting a business is hard work, but what specific obstacles do most people encounter in month 3, month 6, year 2? What do successful people in this area know that others don't? What patterns do they follow? What mistakes do they avoid? What resources do you actually need versus what you think you need? Often, we overestimate what's required to get started and underestimate what's needed to sustain progress. What are the early warning signs that something isn't working? How will you know when to pivot, adjust, or abandon course? Here's another crucial point. Don't just gather information from books, articles, and online sources. Talk to real people who are actually doing what you want to do. Their lived experience is worth more than 100 theoretical guides. When I was considering writing my first book, I didn't just read about publishing. I reached out to 5 published authors and asked them specific questions about their process, challenges, and lessons learned. Those conversations gave me insights I never would have found in any blog post. But here's the warning. Information without action is just entertainment. The goal isn't to become an expert researcher. It's to become an intelligent decision maker. Set a deadline for your research phase and stick to it. Use what I call the good enough principle. You don't need perfect information to make good decisions. You need sufficient information to make informed choices and the flexibility to adjust as you learn more. Remember, in a rapidly changing world, the ability to gather information quickly and act on it intelligently is more valuable than having extensive knowledge about yesterday's reality. The most successful people aren't those who know everything. They're those who know how to learn what they need, when they need it, and how to turn that knowledge into action. So stop guessing your way through life. Start gathering strategic intelligence. Because in the game of life, information isn't just power. It's your ammunition for making smart decisions and creating the outcomes you want. Chapter 4. Seeing the board, Mastering the Big Picture. I'll never forget watching my grandfather play chess with my uncle. My uncle was smart, educated, and focused intently on each move. But he kept losing game after game and couldn't understand why. "You're playing the pieces," my grandfather told him gently. "I'm playing the board." My uncle was so focused on individual moves, capturing pieces, avoiding immediate threats, that he missed the larger patterns developing across the entire game. My grandfather, meanwhile, was orchestrating a strategy that wouldn't pay off for 10 or 15 moves. That's the difference between tactical thinking and strategic thinking. Most people live tactically, reacting to whatever's right in front of them. Strategic thinkers see the whole board. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in real life. Imagine you're having relationship problems with your partner. A tactical approach focuses on the immediate issue. We argued about money again. How do I win this argument or avoid future money fights? A strategic approach sees the bigger picture. We keep arguing about money, but the real issue might be that we have different values around security and freedom. We need to understand each other's deeper concerns and create a system that honors both perspectives. Same problem, completely different level of thinking. Here's what most people miss. Every situation you face is part of a larger system. Your career challenges are connected to industry trends. Your relationship issues reflect deeper communication patterns. Your financial struggles might stem from beliefs you learned in childhood. When you can see these connections, when you can see the whole board instead of just the current move, you gain incredible power. You stop treating symptoms and start addressing root causes. You stop being surprised by random events because you can see the patterns that create them. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. My friend Rachel was constantly stressed about her teenage daughter's behavior. The daughter was moody, secretive, and argumentative. Rachel's tactical approach was to address each incident individually, punishing bad behavior, rewarding good behavior, having serious talks after each conflict. But nothing changed. In fact, things got worse. Then Rachel stepped back and looked at the bigger picture. She realized that all these issues had started around the same time her daughter began high school. The girl was dealing with social pressure, academic stress, and physical changes all at once. The behavioral problems were actually her daughter's way of managing overwhelming feelings she didn't know how to express. Once Rachel saw the whole board, her strategy completely changed. Instead of reacting to each behavior, she focused on creating emotional safety and teaching her daughter healthy coping skills. The specific problems resolved themselves because she addressed the underlying system. This is systems thinking, the ability to see patterns, connections, and root causes instead of just surface-level events. Here's how to develop this skill. Start asking better questions. Instead of what happened, ask what patterns led to this happening. Instead of how do I fix this problem, ask what system created this problem and how do I change that system. When you're facing any challenge, try this exercise. Draw 3 circles. In the center circle, write the immediate problem. In the middle circle, write the factors contributing to that problem. In the outer circle, write the larger forces and systems that influence those factors. For example, if your immediate problem is, I'm always tired, the middle circle might include poor sleep habits, too much caffeine, and work stress. The outer circle might include societal pressure to be constantly productive, a culture that glorifies busyness, and personal beliefs about self-worth being tied to achievement. Now you can see that solving I'm always tired isn't just about getting more sleep. It's about examining your relationship with productivity and achievement. This is how strategic thinkers operate. They zoom out to see the bigger picture, then zoom back in to take intelligent action. But here's a warning. Don't get so caught up in seeing the big picture that you forget to act. Some people use systems thinking as an excuse for inaction. The problem is too complex, or I need to understand everything before I can do anything. That's not strategic thinking. That's overthinking. The goal is to see enough of the big picture to make intelligent moves, not to understand every detail before you act. Think of it like driving at night. Your headlights don't illuminate the entire journey, but they show you enough to take the next safe step. Here's another crucial skill: mapping the players and their motivations. In any situation involving other people, take time to understand who the key players are, what they want, and what influences their decisions. Let's say you're trying to get a promotion at work. The tactical approach focuses on your own performance, working harder, staying later, completing more projects. The strategic approach maps the board. Who makes the promotion decisions? What do they value most? What pressures are they facing? What would make their job easier? Maybe you discover that your boss is under pressure to improve team collaboration. Suddenly, your strategy shifts from just working harder individually to becoming the person who helps the whole team work better together. This isn't manipulation, it's intelligence. When you understand the bigger picture, you can create solutions that benefit everyone, not just yourself. Start practicing this today. In every situation, ask yourself, what's really going on here? Who are the key players and what do they want? What patterns do I notice? What's the root cause, not just the surface symptom? The people who seem to have incredible luck or timing aren't lucky. They're seeing patterns and connections that others miss. They understand that everything is connected, and they use those connections strategically. Remember, tactical thinking asks, how do I handle this situation? Strategic thinking asks, how do I position myself so that these situations work in my favor? When you learn to see the whole board, you don't just react to the game. You start designing it. Chapter 5. Anticipation, Outsmarting Obstacles Before They Appear. Let me tell you about two entrepreneurs I knew who both launched restaurants in the same year, in the same neighborhood. Both had similar concepts, comparable funding, and equal passion for their vision. Jake opened Jake's Kitchen with tremendous enthusiasm. He found a great location, created an amazing menu, and threw a spectacular grand opening. Business was good for the first few months. He was confident he'd made it. Maria opened Cafe Luna with the same enthusiasm, but she did something different. Before her grand opening, she asked herself, what could go wrong? She identified potential problems. What if a key supplier failed? What if her head chef quit? What if the economy took a downturn? What if new competitors moved in nearby? For each scenario, she created a plan. She established relationships with backup suppliers. She cross-trained multiple staff members on key roles. She built a financial cushion larger than she thought she'd need. She developed systems to maintain quality even if turnover happened. When the pandemic hit 2 years later, guess which restaurant survived? Jake's Kitchen closed within 3 months. He had no backup plans, no financial cushion, no systems in place for the crisis. Maria's Cafe Luna not only survived but thrived by quickly adapting to delivery and takeout because she had anticipated the need for operational flexibility. This is the power of anticipation, the ability to prepare for challenges before they appear. It's what separates people who get blindsided by life from those who stay calm and confident no matter what happens. Most people live in what I call reactive mode. They wait for problems to show up, then scramble to respond. Strategic thinkers live in anticipation mode. They identify potential obstacles early and prepare solutions in advance. Here's what's crucial to understand. Anticipation isn't about becoming paranoid or pessimistic. It's about being prepared. It's the difference between worrying about what might go wrong and actually doing something about it. Think of it like this. When you carry an umbrella, you're not expecting rain. You're prepared for it. When you save money for emergencies, you're not hoping for disasters. You're creating security. Anticipation is your mental and practical umbrella for life's inevitable storms. Let me share a personal example. When I was in my 20s, I got my dream job at a growing company. I was so excited that I threw myself into the work completely. I didn't think about what would happen if the company struggled, if my boss left, or if the industry changed. 2 years later, the company was acquired, my entire department was eliminated, and I found myself unemployed with no backup plan. I was devastated, scared, and completely unprepared. If I could go back, I would have practiced anticipation. I would have maintained relationships in other companies, kept my skills current in adjacent areas, and saved more money for transitions. I would have asked, what if this perfect situation doesn't last forever? Not because I expected the worst, but because I wanted to be prepared for change. Here's how to develop your anticipation skills. Start with scenario planning. For any major area of your life, career, relationships, health, finances, identify 4 possible futures. The best case scenario. What would happen if everything goes better than expected? How would you capitalize on that success? What opportunities might emerge? The most likely scenario, based on current trends and patterns, what's the most probable outcome? How do you position yourself for this reality? The challenging scenario, what if things get difficult? What obstacles might emerge? How would you navigate them? The wild card scenario, what unexpected events could completely change the game? How would you adapt to radical shifts you can't predict? For each scenario, ask, what would I need to do today to be prepared for this future? Let's apply this to something practical. Say you're in a relationship that's going well. Most people don't want to think about potential problems because it feels negative or pessimistic. But strategic thinkers prepare. Best case, the relationship continues to deepen and grow. How do we nurture that growth? What shared goals might we pursue? Most likely, we'll face normal relationship challenges around communication, life changes, and balancing individual needs with partnership needs. How do we build skills for handling these challenges? Challenging. One of us might face a major life crisis, career change, or family issue that creates stress. How do we support each other through difficult times? Wildcard. Unexpected opportunities or challenges might arise that test our adaptability. How do we make decisions together? How do we handle significant change? This isn't pessimistic planning, it's intelligent preparation. When you've thought through scenarios in advance, you respond to challenges with calm confidence instead of panic and confusion. Here's another powerful tool, contingency thinking. For any plan you make, identify the critical points where things could go wrong and create backup options. If you're planning to switch careers, what's your backup plan if the new field doesn't work out? If you're moving to a new city, what will you do if you can't find the job you want? If you're starting a business, how will you survive if it takes longer to become profitable than expected? This isn't negative thinking, it's strategic thinking. When you have contingencies, you can take bigger risks because you know you're not risking everything. But here's what's important. Don't let anticipation become paralysis. The goal isn't to prepare for every possible scenario. That's impossible. The goal is to prepare for the most likely and most impactful scenarios so you can move forward with confidence. I like to think of anticipation as creating a mental parachute. You hope you'll never need it, but knowing it's there allows you to take the leap. Starting today, practice looking ahead. Before you make any major decision, ask, what could go right? What could go wrong? What do I need to prepare for? Build your financial cushion. Maintain your relationships, keep learning new skills, and stay adaptable. Because here's the truth, life will surprise you. Change is inevitable. But when you practice anticipation, surprises become opportunities instead of disasters. You'll be the person others turn to in crisis because you're the one who stayed calm and prepared. The future belongs to those who see it coming. Chapter 6. Timing is strategy. When to move, when to wait. There's an old saying in investing. Time in the market beats timing the market. But in life strategy, timing is everything. The same decision made at different times can lead to completely different outcomes. Let me tell you about twin brothers, Marcus and Michael, who both wanted to start their own businesses. They had similar ideas, comparable skills, and equal determination. But their timing was completely different. Marcus was impatient. The moment he had his business idea, he quit his job, maxed out his credit cards, and dove in head first. This was 2008, right as the economy was collapsing. Despite his hard work and good intentions, his business failed within 18 months. He lost his savings, damaged his credit, and spent years recovering. Michael had the same impulse to start immediately, but he forced himself to pause and evaluate the timing. The economy was unstable, his personal finances weren't strong enough to weather a downturn, and he realized he needed more experience in his target industry. So he waited, but he didn't waste the waiting time. He kept his job, but started freelancing in his spare time to build skills and connections. He saved money aggressively. He studied the market conditions and prepared for better timing. In 2012, When the economy had stabilized and his personal situation was stronger, Michael launched his business. It succeeded beyond his expectations because he had the resources, experience, and market conditions necessary for success. Same idea, same brothers, different timing. One failed, one thrived. This is why strategic thinkers obsess over timing. They understand that what you do is important, but when you do it can determine whether you succeed or fail. Here's what most people get wrong about timing. They think it's about waiting for the perfect moment. But perfect moments don't exist. Strategic timing isn't about waiting for perfect conditions. It's about understanding when conditions are favorable enough to justify action. There are 3 elements to strategic timing: readiness, opportunity, and leverage. I call this the timing triangle. Readiness is about your personal preparation. Do you have the skills, resources, and emotional capacity to handle what you're about to undertake? Are you prepared for the challenges and opportunities that success will bring? Opportunity is about external conditions. Is the market ready for what you're offering? Are the people in your life open to the changes you want to make? Is the broader environment conducive to your success? Leverage is about multiplicative factors. Will your actions be amplified by other trends or forces? Are there momentum factors that will help carry your efforts forward? Let me give you a personal example. A few years ago, I wanted to leave my corporate job to start my own consulting practice. My readiness was high. I had developed expertise, saved money, and felt emotionally prepared for the uncertainty. But the opportunity wasn't right. The industry was going through upheaval, and companies were cutting consulting budgets. Instead of forcing it, I waited. But I used that time strategically. I continued building my expertise and network while watching for market signals. When companies started investing in consulting again, I was ready to move immediately. The leverage factor came when several former colleagues started their own companies and needed consulting support. My timing aligned multiple favorable factors, and the business launched successfully. But here's the crucial balance. You can't wait forever. Analysis paralysis is just as dangerous as impulsive action. Sometimes the perfect timing never comes, and you have to move with good enough timing and adapt as you go. How do you know when it's time to move? Ask yourself these questions. Have I prepared as much as I reasonably can? Are the external conditions favorable enough to give me a fair chance? Will waiting likely improve my situation, or am I just avoiding risk? Sometimes the answer is clear. If you're not ready and conditions are terrible, wait and prepare. If you're ready and conditions are favorable, move. But often, the answer is ambiguous. That's when you have to trust your strategic judgment. Here's a framework that helps: the 70% rule. If you're 70% ready and conditions are 70% favorable, that's usually enough to justify action. Waiting for 100% certainty in both areas often means waiting forever. The key is building feedback loops so you can adjust quickly based on what you learn. Move when timing is good enough, then adapt intelligently as conditions change. Remember, timing isn't just about when to start. It's also about when to pivot, when to double down, and when to walk away. Strategic thinkers are constantly evaluating whether their current timing is still serving them. Your ability to read timing, to sense when the moment is right for action or patience, is one of your greatest strategic assets. It's what separates people who succeed from people who struggle, even when they have similar abilities. So pay attention to timing. Learn to recognize when conditions are aligning in your favor. Develop the patience to wait when waiting serves you, and the courage to move when the moment is right. Because timing isn't luck, it's strategy. Chapter 7: Leverage: How to Win with Less Effort. Archimedes once said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." He understood something that most people miss. Success isn't about working harder. It's about finding the right leverage points. Let me tell you about 2 friends who both wanted to lose weight and get healthy. Jennifer decided to completely overhaul her life. She joined an expensive gym, hired a personal trainer, bought all new workout clothes, and committed to exercising 2 hours every day. She also went on a strict diet, eliminating entire food groups and counting every calorie. For the first month, Jennifer was incredibly motivated. But by month 2, the routine became overwhelming. She was exhausted, hungry, and stressed. By month 3, she had abandoned the plan entirely and gained back the few pounds she had lost. Karen took a different approach. Instead of trying to change everything at once, she looked for leverage points, small changes that would create big results. She started walking for 20 minutes during her lunch break. She replaced her afternoon snack with fruit. She began drinking a glass of water before each meal. These changes seemed almost insignificant compared to Jennifer's dramatic overhaul. But here's what happened. Karen's small changes were sustainable. The walking gave her energy, which made her want to move more. The fruit satisfied her sweet tooth while providing better nutrition. The water helped her feel fuller and eat less. Within 6 months, Karen had lost 30 pounds and completely transformed her relationship with health. Her small, leveraged changes had created a positive spiral that continued to compound over time. This is the power of leverage, finding the actions that create disproportionate results. Instead of working harder, you work smarter. Instead of applying more force, you find better leverage points. Most people approach challenges with what I call brute force thinking. If something isn't working, they try to push harder. If they're not achieving their goals, they work longer hours. If their relationships are struggling, they try to spend more time together. But strategic thinkers look for leverage. They ask, what's the smallest change that would create the biggest impact? What's the one thing that, if I improved it, would make everything else easier? This applies to every area of life. In your career, leverage might mean developing one key skill that makes you indispensable rather than trying to be good at everything. In relationships, it might mean learning to listen deeply rather than trying to solve every problem. In finances, it might mean automating your savings rather than constantly trying to budget better. Here's how to identify leverage points in your own life. Start with the 80-20 principle. In any area you want to improve, 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. Your job is to identify that crucial 20% and focus your energy there. Let's apply this to building better relationships. You could spend hours analyzing every interaction, reading relationship books, and attending workshops. Or you could identify the 1 or 2 behaviors that have the biggest impact on your connections with others. For many people, that leverage point is simply asking better questions and really listening to the answers. This one skill, deep listening, can transform every relationship in your life. It's not complicated, but it's incredibly powerful. Here's another example, building wealth. You could spend hours researching individual stocks, trying to time the market, and constantly adjusting your portfolio. Or you could identify the leverage points, spending less than you earn, investing consistently in diversified funds, and letting compound interest work over time. The leveraged approach isn't as exciting as trying to get rich quick, but it's far more effective for most people. Let me share a personal story about leverage. Early in my career, I was working extremely hard but not getting the recognition or opportunities one wanted. I was putting in long hours, taking on extra projects, and saying yes to everything. But I was still overlooked for promotions and important assignments. Then I realized I was working hard but not strategically. Instead of doing more of everything, I identified the leverage point, building stronger relationships with key decision makers. I started having regular coffee meetings with senior leaders, not to ask for anything, but to understand their challenges and share insights. This one change, 30 minutes of strategic relationship building per week, had more impact on my career than all those extra hours of busy work. Within a year, I was getting the opportunities and recognition I wanted. That's leverage in action. Here's a framework for finding leverage in any situation: the strategic leverage audit. List all the activities you're currently doing to achieve a goal. Then ask, which of these activities create 80% of my results? Which ones could I eliminate or minimize? What's one thing I'm not doing that could dramatically improve my outcomes? For the activities that create the biggest impact, ask, how can I do more of this? How can I do it more effectively? How can I systematize or automate it? For example, if you're trying to build a business, you might discover that networking events create more opportunities than cold calling. That's your leverage point. Instead of spending more time on cold calls, invest that time in attending better networking events and building deeper relationships. But here's a warning: don't confuse leverage with shortcuts. Leverage isn't about avoiding hard work. It's about making your hard work more effective. The most leveraged people often work just as hard as everyone else, but their effort creates exponentially better results. Another powerful form of leverage is using other people's resources, knowledge, and networks. Instead of trying to learn everything yourself, learn from people who have already solved the problems you're facing. Instead of building everything from scratch, build on existing platforms and systems. This isn't about taking advantage of others. It's about creating win-win situations where everyone benefits from the collaboration. Remember, in a world where everyone is busy and working hard, your competitive advantage isn't effort, it's intelligence. It's your ability to identify the leverage points that create maximum impact with minimum wasted energy. So stop trying to move mountains with your bare hands. Find the lever, position it correctly, and let physics do the work. Because the goal isn't to work harder, it's to work smarter. Chapter 8: Adapting on the Fly, Strategic Agility in Action. I want to tell you about two small business owners who faced the same devastating challenge. When ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft exploded in popularity, traditional taxi companies were hit hard. Many went out of business almost overnight. Tom owned a taxi company that had been in his family for 30 years. When ride-sharing arrived, he was furious. He complained about unfair competition, lobbied for regulations, and doubled down on traditional taxi services. He kept doing the same things, just working harder. Within 2 years, his business was bankrupt. Lisa owned a similar taxi company in the same city. She was just as shocked by the disruption, but she responded differently. Instead of fighting the change, she asked, "How can I adapt to this new reality?" She pivoted quickly. She partnered with ride-sharing apps to provide services they couldn't: medical transport, luxury rides, and corporate contracts. She used her existing relationships with hotels and airports to create exclusive partnerships. She even started her own app for local customers who preferred supporting a local business. Today, Lisa's company is more profitable than it ever was before the disruption. She didn't just survive the change, she thrived because of it. This is strategic agility, the ability to adapt quickly when conditions change without losing sight of your core objectives. In our rapidly changing world, this might be the most important skill you can develop. Here's what most people get wrong about change: they see it as the enemy. When something disrupts their plans, they resist, complain, or try to force the old way to work. But strategic thinkers see change as information. It's telling them something important about reality, and they adjust accordingly. Think about how nature handles change. When a river encounters a boulder, it doesn't try to push the boulder out of the way. It flows around it, creating new channels and often becoming stronger in the process. The river maintains its essential purpose, flowing toward the sea, while adapting its path to new obstacles. This is how strategic thinkers navigate change. They stay flexible about the how while remaining committed to the what and why. Let me give you a personal example. Several years ago, I had planned to launch an online course. I had spent months developing the content, building the website, and planning the marketing strategy. But just before the launch, a major competitor released a very similar course at half the price I was planning to charge. My first instinct was to panic. Months of work seemed wasted. I could have pushed forward with the original plan and hoped for the best, or gotten discouraged and given up entirely. Instead, I practiced strategic agility. I paused and asked, what is this change telling me? How can I adapt without abandoning my core goal? I realized the competitor's course was more basic than mine, aimed at beginners. So I repositioned my course for advanced users, added more sophisticated content, and actually raised the price. I turned the disruption into an opportunity for differentiation. The course became more successful than I had originally planned because the competition forced me to create something truly unique. This is the power of strategic agility. Instead of being derailed by change, you use it to improve your position. But how do you develop this skill? Start by changing your relationship with uncertainty. Most people treat uncertainty as dangerous and try to eliminate it. Strategic thinkers treat uncertainty as inevitable and prepare for it. This means building flexibility into your plans from the beginning. Instead of creating rigid strategies, create adaptive frameworks. Instead of betting everything on one approach, develop multiple options. Here's a practical tool, the pivot protocol. When facing unexpected change, follow these steps. First, pause and assess. What exactly has changed? What are the new constraints and opportunities? What assumptions are no longer valid? Second, reconnect with your core purpose. What are you really trying to achieve? What outcomes matter most to you? Third, brainstorm new paths. Given the changed conditions, what are different ways to reach your destination? What new possibilities has the change created? Fourth, test and adapt. Choose the most promising new approach and start small. Gather feedback quickly and adjust based on what you learn. Let me show you how this works with a relationship example. Say you and your partner had planned to move in together, but then one of you gets a job offer in another city. The change disrupts your plan, but it doesn't have to derail your relationship. Pause and assess. One person has a career opportunity that requires relocation. The original plan of living in the same city is no longer viable. Reconnect with core purpose. You want to build a strong relationship together while both pursuing meaningful careers. Brainstorm new paths. Long-distance relationship for a defined period. The other person looks for opportunities in the new city. You both explore remote work options, or one person negotiates a delayed start date. Test and adapt. Choose the most promising option and try it for a specific time frame, with regular check-ins to assess how it's working. The key is maintaining strategic agility without becoming scattered. You want to be flexible about tactics while staying committed to your values and long-term vision. Here's another crucial element: building resilience into your life systems. This means diversifying your income sources, maintaining multiple relationships, developing transferable skills, and creating financial cushions. When you're not dependent on any single job, relationship, or opportunity for your well-being, you can adapt to changes from a position of strength rather than desperation. Practice micro-adaptations daily. When your usual route to work is blocked, find an alternative quickly instead of getting frustrated. When your favorite restaurant is closed, try something new instead of going hungry. When technology changes, learn the new system instead of complaining about the old one. These small adaptations build your agility muscle for bigger challenges. Remember, the goal isn't to become a shapeless creature that changes with every wind. It's to become like water, maintaining your essential nature while flowing gracefully around obstacles. In a world of constant change, your ability to adapt quickly and intelligently isn't just an advantage, it's a survival skill. The future belongs to those who can dance with uncertainty rather than fight it. Chapter 9: Psychological Warfare, Influence, and People Strategy. Let me tell you about two managers who worked at the same company, had similar qualifications, and were competing for the same promotion. Their approaches couldn't have been more different. David believed that hard work and good ideas would speak for themselves. He put his head down, completed every project excellently, and assumed his results would be noticed and rewarded. He rarely engaged in office politics or relationship building, considering them beneath him. Sarah understood something David missed. Success isn't just about what you know or what you do. It's about how well you understand and work with people. She worked just as hard as David, but she also invested time in understanding her colleagues, building alliances, and communicating her ideas in ways that resonated with different personalities. Sarah made it a point to understand what motivated each stakeholder. She knew that her boss valued efficiency and clear communication, so she presented her ideas with data and concise summaries. She understood that the CEO was visionary and future-focused, so she framed her contributions in terms of long-term impact. When Sarah had a new idea, she didn't just announce it in a meeting. She had informal conversations with key people beforehand, addressed their concerns privately, and often let them contribute to refining the idea so they felt ownership of the final proposal. Guess who got the promotion? David was frustrated and confused. "My work was better than hers," he complained. "The system is rigged." But the system wasn't rigged. David simply didn't understand how it actually worked. He was playing chess while everyone else was playing a completely different game. This is the reality most people don't want to face. Technical competence is just the entry fee. Beyond that, success is largely determined by your ability to understand, influence, and work effectively with other people. I'm not talking about manipulation or playing political games. I'm talking about psychological intelligence, understanding how people think, what motivates them, and how to communicate in ways that create mutual benefit. Here's the truth. Every interaction you have is an opportunity to build influence or squander it. Every conversation either brings people closer to your perspective or pushes them away. Most people leave these interactions to chance. Strategic thinkers approach them intentionally. Let me share a framework I call the influence ladder. It has 4 steps: listen, frame, anchor, and lead. Step 1. Listen deeply. Before you try to influence anyone, you must understand them. What do they care about? What are their concerns, fears, and aspirations? What language do they use? What examples resonate with them? Most people skip this step. They're so focused on getting their point across that they never really hear what the other person is saying. But you can't influence someone you don't understand. Here's a powerful technique. Before presenting your idea to anyone important, ask them about their current challenges and priorities. Really listen to their responses. Then craft your message to address their specific concerns. Step 2. Frame strategically. How you present information is often more important than the information itself. The same idea can be accepted or rejected based entirely on how it's framed. If you want your teenager to clean their room, you could say, "Clean your room because I said so." Or you could say, "Having a clean space will help you feel more organized and find your things easily." Same request, different frame. If you want your boss to approve a project, you could focus on what you want to do. Or you could focus on the problems it will solve for them and the organization. Strategic framing means presenting your ideas in terms of the other person's benefits, not your own desires. Step 3. Anchor expectations. Before people can say yes to what you want, they need to believe it's possible and reasonable. You anchor expectations by providing context, examples, and precedents. If you're asking for a salary increase, don't just state the number you want. First, anchor their expectations by sharing market research, highlighting your contributions, and explaining how the increase reflects your expanded responsibilities. If you're trying to resolve a conflict with your partner, don't just demand change. First, anchor the conversation by acknowledging what's working well and expressing your commitment to the relationship. Step 4. Lead collaboratively. The most powerful form of influence doesn't feel like influence at all. It feels like collaboration. Instead of telling people what to do, you guide them to conclusions that serve everyone's interests. Ask questions that help them discover solutions. What do you think would happen if we tried this approach? How do you think we could address this challenge? What would need to be true for this to work? When people reach conclusions themselves, they're far more committed to following through than when they're simply told what to do. Let me give you a real-life example of this framework in action. My friend Jennifer wanted to convince her parents to move to a retirement community. Her initial approach was direct. "You're getting older, the house is too big, and I'm worried about your safety." This approach triggered their defenses. They felt like she was calling them old and incapable. So Jennifer tried the influence ladder. She started by listening to their concerns. They valued independence, worried about leaving their community, and feared losing their identity. She reframed the conversation around their values. "I know how important your independence is to you. What would help you maintain that independence as long as possible?" She anchored expectations by arranging visits to high-quality retirement communities and introducing them to active, happy residents who had made similar transitions. Finally, she led collaboratively. What features would be most important to you in a new living situation? What would make you feel excited about a change rather than worried about it? The result? Her parents began exploring options themselves and eventually chose a community they were genuinely excited about. Here's what's crucial to understand. This isn't about manipulation. It's about communication that honors both your needs and theirs. The goal is win-win outcomes, not zero-sum victories. Strategic influence is also about building long-term relationships, not just winning immediate battles. Sometimes the most influential thing you can do is listen without trying to change anyone's mind. Sometimes it's admitting when you're wrong. Sometimes it's giving others credit for successes. People who are respected and influential over time are those who make others feel heard, valued, and intelligent. They understand that true power comes not from dominating others, but from empowering them. Start practicing this today. In every conversation, focus more on understanding than being understood. Present your ideas in terms of others' benefits. Ask questions that guide discovery rather than statements that demand compliance. Remember, the most powerful strategist isn't the loudest person in the room. It's the one who understands how people think and feel and uses that understanding to create outcomes that benefit everyone. Chapter 10: Execution: Turning Strategy into Real-World Results. I want to tell you about the most painful lesson I ever learned about strategy. Several years ago, I spent months developing what I thought was a brilliant plan to launch a new business. I researched the market, identified the perfect target audience, mapped out every detail of my marketing strategy, and created elaborate financial projections. I had binders full of research, flowcharts covering my walls, and a PowerPoint presentation that could impress any investor. My strategy was flawless. I was certain of success. But here's what happened: nothing. For weeks, I admired my perfect plan while taking no meaningful action. I kept refining the strategy, adding more detail, perfecting the projections. But I wasn't actually building anything. Meanwhile, a friend of mine launched a similar business with a much simpler plan. Her strategy wasn't as elegant as mine. Her research wasn't as thorough, but she had one crucial advantage. She started. While I was perfecting my plan, she was talking to customers, learning from mistakes, and improving her product based on real feedback. By the time I finally started executing, she was already successful and several iterations ahead of me. That's when I learned the hardest truth about strategic thinking. Strategy without execution is just fantasy. The most brilliant plan in the world is worthless if it never gets implemented. Here's what most people get wrong about execution. They think it's about working harder or being more disciplined. But execution isn't just about effort. It's about intelligent action. It's about turning abstract strategies into concrete behaviors and systems. The gap between strategy and execution is where most dreams die. People get excited about their vision, create elaborate plans, then get overwhelmed when it's time to actually do the work. They procrastinate, get distracted, or abandon the plan when the first obstacle appears. Strategic execution is different. It's about breaking your big strategy into small, manageable actions, then creating systems to ensure those actions happen consistently. Let me share a framework that transforms strategy into results: the 90-day strategic sprint. Instead of trying to execute your entire strategy at once, you focus on 90-day cycles. Each cycle has one primary objective that moves you significantly closer to your ultimate goal. Here's how it works. Start by identifying the one thing that, if accomplished in the next 90 days, would create the biggest impact on your long-term strategy. Not 10 things, not 5 things, one primary objective. For example, if your strategy is to start a consulting business, your first 90-day objective might be validate demand by having conversations with 50 potential clients. If your strategy is to improve your marriage, it might be establish weekly date nights and learn conflict resolution skills. Once you have your 90-day objective, reverse engineer it into weekly and daily actions. If you need to talk to 50 potential clients in 90 days, that's roughly 4 conversations per week. What specific actions will you take each day to make those conversations happen? This approach works because it makes abstract strategies concrete. Instead of start a consulting business someday, you have make 2 phone calls today to potential clients. Instead of improve my marriage, you have plan this week's date night and practice active listening during dinner conversations. But here's the crucial element that most people miss: feedback loops. Strategic execution isn't about blindly following your plan. It's about adapting intelligently based on what you learn. Build feedback mechanisms into every 90-day sprint. How will you know if your actions are working? What metrics will you track? How often will you review and adjust your approach? Going back to the consulting example, your feedback loop might include tracking how many conversations turn into actual interest, what objections come up repeatedly, and which types of clients respond most positively. This feedback allows you to refine your approach throughout the 90 days. Let me tell you about Maria, who used this framework to completely transform her career. She was stuck in a job she hated, but felt paralyzed by the complexity of making a change. Her vague strategy was find a more fulfilling career, which felt overwhelming and led to no action. Instead, she focused on a 90-day objective: explore 3 different career paths through informational interviews and volunteer experiences. She broke this down into weekly actions: reach out to 2 professionals each week for informational interviews, volunteer 4 hours each weekend in different fields, and journal about her experiences. By the end of 90 days, Maria had clarity about what she wanted to pursue and had built relationships in her target field. Her next 90-day objective was develop skills and credentials for nonprofit marketing roles. This led to specific actions like taking an online course, volunteering for marketing projects, and building a portfolio. Within a year, Maria had successfully transitioned to a career she loved, not because she had a perfect plan from the beginning, but because she executed consistently and adapted based on feedback. Here's another crucial element of strategic execution: celebrating small wins. Most people only celebrate when they achieve their ultimate goal, but by then, they've often burned out or lost motivation along the way. Strategic thinkers celebrate progress, not just arrival. They acknowledge every step forward, every lesson learned, every obstacle overcome. This maintains momentum and makes the journey sustainable. At the end of each week, ask yourself, what progress did I make toward my 90-day objective? What did I learn? What will I do differently next week? Then acknowledge your efforts before planning the next steps. But let's be realistic about obstacles, because they will appear. The strategy looks perfect on paper, but reality is messy. You'll face unexpected challenges, competing priorities, and moments when you want to quit. This is where most people abandon their plans. But strategic thinkers expect obstacles and prepare for them. They build buffer time into their schedules, create accountability systems, and develop contingency plans for common challenges. If your 90-day objective requires daily actions, what will you do when you get sick, travel, or face a crisis? If your plan depends on other people's cooperation, what's your backup approach when they're unavailable? This isn't pessimistic planning, it's realistic execution. When you anticipate obstacles and prepare for them, you can navigate challenges without derailing your entire strategy. Finally, remember that execution is a skill that improves with practice. Your first 90-day sprint might feel clunky or overwhelming. That's normal. Each cycle, you'll get better at choosing objectives, breaking them down into actions, and adapting based on feedback. The key is to start. Pick one objective that would make a significant impact if achieved in the next 90 days. Break it down into weekly and daily actions. Create feedback loops to track progress and learn from experience. Then begin. Because here's the ultimate truth. The world doesn't reward the best plans. It rewards the best execution. You don't need perfect strategy. You need consistent, intelligent action. Your strategy is only as powerful as your commitment to implementing it. So stop planning and start doing. Stop perfecting and start progressing. The life you want is built one strategic action at a time. Conclusion: your strategic edge, living like a master tactician. We've covered a lot of ground together in these past 90 minutes. You've learned how to pause instead of react, how to get crystal clear on what you truly want, how to gather information strategically, and how to see the bigger picture while others get lost in details. You understand how to anticipate challenges before they appear, how to time your actions for maximum impact, how to leverage your resources for exponential results, and how to adapt when life throws you curveballs. You've discovered how to influence others ethically and effectively, and most importantly, how to turn all of this strategic thinking into real-world action and results. But here's what I want you to remember above all else. You were not born to be reactive. You were not meant to drift through life at the mercy of circumstances, emotions, and other people's agendas. You were built to lead, to anticipate, to outthink any challenge that comes your way. The difference between where you are now and where you want to be isn't luck, talent, or circumstances. It's thinking. It's your ability to pause when others react, to see patterns when others see chaos, to plan when others hope. Every single day, you have hundreds of opportunities to think strategically. When you wake up and feel the urge to check your phone immediately, you can pause and ask, what outcome do I want from my morning? When someone triggers your anger, you can take 3 seconds to consider, what response will actually solve this problem? When you face a difficult decision, you can step back and examine the bigger picture before choosing your next move. These moments, these tiny strategic choices, compound over time into dramatically different life outcomes. The person who consistently thinks before acting, who plans before moving, who considers consequences before choosing, becomes someone others turn to for guidance. They become the calm presence in chaotic situations, the trusted advisor in important decisions, the person who somehow always seems to make the right moves. This isn't magic. It's not talent. It's strategic thinking applied consistently over time. So here's your challenge. For the next 30 days, practice the strategic pause. Before you react to anything significant, give yourself 3 seconds to ask, what outcome do I want here? What would a strategic version of me do next? Define your one-sentence strategy for the most important area of your life. Write it down. Read it every morning. Let it guide your daily choices. Start your first 90-day strategic sprint. Pick one objective that would significantly impact your long-term success. Break it down into weekly actions. Begin today. Because here's the truth that successful people understand. Your mind is your greatest weapon, and strategic thinking is how you learn to wield it with precision. The future doesn't happen to you. You happen to the future. Every choice you make is either moving you toward the life you want or away from it. There's no standing still. So think strategically, plan intelligently, act with purpose, and watch as your life transforms from something that happens to you into something you deliberately create. You have everything you need to master this. The only question is, will you use it? Your strategic edge starts now.